My name is Todd Sanders, and I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber. We appreciate you joining us for today's webinar featuring Sandra Watson, President and CEO of the Arizona Commerce Authority. I'd like to begin today by thanking our sponsors who really have shown such a great amount of commitment to our community, our chamber, and our state. So a virtual round of applause for APS, SRP, and Fennemore Craig for all their support. Now, as you know, today's discussion really is important for our community. This crisis has put our state and our businesses in an unparalleled position. And as your chamber, we're committed to ensuring that you receive up-to-date information about what to expect in the coming weeks. Today's discussion will center around how our state's working to ensure economic security in the months and years ahead. And we're just thrilled to have Sandra Watson here, who really has been in the eye of the hurricane, along with Governor Ducey, to ensure that we have stability in the coming months and of course our years. So to quickly review today's agenda, we'll begin with remarks from Fennemore Craig. We'll hear an update, obviously, from Sandra Watson, and then we're going to take your questions. So there is a Q&A box on the side of your screen. We're going to attempt to get through as many questions as possible. We've had good luck in the past, so feel free to go ahead and start those. Sandra's going to give us an update. So those should also stir some questions, but go ahead and start asking those and we'll get those queued up. But for now, it's my privilege to introduce Ryan Curtis, who's, I'm proud to say, a member of my board of directors. He's also chair of ERISA and the Employee Benefits Practice Group for our sponsor, Fennemore Craig. So to share some remarks, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you to the Chamber for continuing to put on these events. As Todd said, my name is Ryan Curtis, and I'm chair of the ERISA Employee Benefits Practice Group here at Fennemore Craig. So Fennemore Craig's been a sponsor of these events for a while now, and while we always look forward to having people come to our office for these important events and meet you in person and let you network, we think this is the next best thing. So I was really pleased when Todd and his team came to us about continuing to sponsor these events through a webinar. It's a really good way to keep the business community in contact with each other and get important messages out as we look forward to a recovery from what has been a difficult situation. As an employee benefits attorney, I have recently been advising a lot of good companies and clients who have had to make very difficult decisions with their workforce, with their benefits, and also helping them navigate through new laws that we hadn't heard of a month ago, such as the CARES Act and other things that have changed the face of business. So with that in mind, it's always important to continue business development. A lot of these companies are still looking to, while they're making difficult decisions now, looking to how they can be best in place for a good recovery. So on that note, it's my pleasure at this time to turn the time to our speaker, President and CEO of the Arizona Commerce Authority, Sandra Watson. Please welcome Sandra.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you, Todd. I'm excited to be here with you today, and I'm pleased to join all of you virtually this afternoon. As Todd mentioned, and Ryan, COVID-19 has caused an unprecedented shock to our economy. The Commerce Authority has been working to help businesses statewide navigate through this crisis. From the moment the severity of the situation became evident to us, in working obviously in a very collaborative way with the Phoenix Chamber and all of our nonprofit partners, those in particular who are serving the business community. We've been working very closely to ensure that our businesses have at least the answers they need, and in many cases we are not going to have the answers, but I think the ACA and obviously our partners are working very hard to ensure that you have the latest information possible. And under Governor Ducey's leadership, the collaboration with the private industry and our statewide partners, we quickly deployed what we view as a very comprehensive and intentional strategy to support businesses. As many of you know, Arizona has a very strong small business community. And to give you a better sense of the landscape of our business community, and this is obviously prior to the COVID-19, but it should give you a framework as to how many businesses in our state are being impacted. So Arizona is home to over 575,000 small business, or total businesses, I should say. But 4 to 5 of those businesses are self-employed individuals. They're considered non-employer businesses. So we have roughly about 110,000 businesses that are considered employers. And of that, we have about 106,000 companies in our state that have less than 500 employees. And so, and that is based on the definition, the small business is based on the definition that SBA uses. So 500 or less employees. So we have about just over 100,000 businesses in that category. As you know, based on those numbers, that we have an overwhelmingly majority of businesses in our state that are small. If you look at that percentage, it's probably about 97% if we were talking only about employer businesses. So as we continue to operate in this environment, you have all been very much aware of the actions that the governor has taken. He has introduced several executive orders, which I know Todd has shared with all of you. And he's really taken some quick action to ensure that our small businesses and the workers in our state who are faced with this, this unprecedented challenge, that ultimately we can hope to begin to mitigate some of the challenges. Again, we are in a situation that is uncharted territory, and so decisions get made very quickly, and things change on a regular basis. But some of the things that obviously you are aware of, and I'll recap for you, the halting of evictions in the state for businesses and individuals who are unable to pay their rent. Very important measure for us. We work very closely, obviously, with the banking institutions as well as landlords and others. That was obviously an important measure. Allowing the restaurants to sell alcohol to go was also a very important revenue source for a number of these small businesses. Waiving the liquor license for 90 days, allowing restaurants to repackage and sell grocery items that they had on hand, helping licensed professionals in the state stay licensed, and deferring certain requirements so that there was no interruption in their work, allowing Arizonans to get documents notarized remotely. So we're all living in this remote environment, and it's really important that we're able to adapt quickly. And then, of course, providing no-fee permits for food trucks to operate at our highway rest stops. And you probably have seen some of that just recently. And these are all measures to really help keep some level of business activity going in the state of Arizona. Many of you have heard from Todd and from a number of other partners the number of new financial relief programs designed for businesses. Many of those were part of the CARES Act, but there were some programs that were also identified by the federal government, but were not part of that particular act. So I'll run through very, very quickly, and I'll leave some of this for questions later if you're interested in hearing more about some of these programs. But the most popular program that I think you've all heard about, and one that we've been working very hard at with our partners, has been the Paycheck Protection Program, known as PPP. All these acronyms that none of us knew, 30 days ago. Are just now well known to all of us. So the Paycheck Protection Program provides additional relief and funding for our small businesses. This program is designed specifically for businesses that are under 500 employees. Many of you know that there was $349 billion dedicated to this program a couple of weeks ago. Those dollars have been allocated. So all $349 billion were allocated in a very, very short time frame. In Arizona, we were able to successfully get 19,300 businesses in our state funded. So we're very excited about that. That totals about $4.9 billion that will be coming into our state to help support these small businesses. This program was designed to help these businesses manage through at least an 8-week period. And so the funding that these businesses have to pay their payroll, rent, utilities over a 2-month period will be forgivable. So without getting into a lot of the details, the important aspect of this program is that Congress is looking to put in some additional dollars, and we're very excited to hear that the Senate has agreed to a package, and that will be voted on obviously in the House. And we'll see another $250 billion dedicated to specifically to this program through the banks. And so that's very similar. The application has not changed. And there's a lot of pending applications currently in the queue. So those applications hopefully will get to that next step where they will see approval once Congress approves the funding. There'll be another $60 billion. So for a total of $310 billion, but there'll be another $60 billion. Again, same application, same program, but it'll go through the CDFIs and the community banks. And it is designed specifically to target micro businesses. I think the challenge that many of our micro businesses had was establishing that relationship with the bank and making sure that they had the time to fill out those applications. So one of the key takeaways in all of this is this program is enormously popular. And in talking with representatives at the SBA, they had indicated a couple of days ago that 20% of the applicants that made it through the banking process got funded. So that means 80% of the applications that were in the queue did not receive funding because the funding ran out. So there's a significant amount of interest. People have talked about, sort of the second tranche of funding, potentially a third and fourth tranche. Again, not knowing what's in the pipeline, but knowing there's a significant amount in the pipeline is an indication that we may see some additional funding allocated. We'll see how long it'll take to get through the second tranche. But the good news is that this additional $60 billion dedicated for micro lending is available for our smaller companies. So we've added a calculator to our website. We have a business resource section on our website that will allow businesses to actually calculate what that loan amount will look like and what the forgivable piece of that loan will look like. So I encourage all of you who are interested in the program to go to the website, or if you have businesses that are interested, please point them in our direction. We're working obviously in close partnership with Todd and the team to make sure that every single business in our state has the information they need. And we're hoping that we'll see a number of companies in Arizona achieve sort of that next level of funding. So we're waiting on that. And those, I think, some exciting things that are happening. Many of you have heard about some of the other programs that we have available to us. They are the disaster, the emergency, I should say, injury loan program, which is also available. They've also received some additional funding, so that's been an important element to that. Also, SBA has extended some of their existing 5A and 504 programs to work with existing companies. They're looking at deferring payments and interest over a period of time. So that's also another very important aspect of it. So the most important message in all of this is that if you have a banking relationship currently with, in any of those programs, you should continue those. talk to your banks, find out what options there are that are available to you. Also, talk to chambers, our organization and others. There's lots of people out there who are wanting to provide a level of assistance to ensure that our companies are getting what they need. I also want to talk a little bit about the work that the state has been doing around personal protective equipment. Again, another one of those acronyms that is PPE. And obviously, you know, our healthcare workers on the front line are doing just an enormous job of keeping Arizonans safe and across the country, obviously, and ensuring that they have the protective equipment they need to continue to do their job as effectively as they've been doing is an important part of the work that we're all doing. So working very closely, obviously under the governor's leadership, working with the Arizona Department of Health Services and our hospitals to better understand what those needs are. We've dedicated an entire team here at the ACA to work with our existing manufacturers as well as potential vendors nationally or internationally to ensure that we are sourcing the right equipment for our healthcare providers. We've got a team here at the ACA that is part of the manufacturing extension program. So while they do work with Arizona businesses, they are part of a larger network. And that network consists of manufacturing extension programs across the country. There is one in every single state. So there's a lot of discussion, peer exchange discussion around what others are doing in their states. And we're able to not only work with our existing manufacturers, but tap into manufacturers across the country. So we've been working with the Arizona Department of Health Services to identify vendors who can supply this kind of information. So we've had some great success. As many of you know, we work very closely with Honeywell. Not only were they able to stand up a manufacturing operation right here in Phoenix that we're very excited about, and we're working with them on that. And they'll be employing an additional 500 people. And this is obviously a quick turnaround because they want to get up and running and producing N95s as quickly as possible. So we've been able to work very closely with them on making sure that they've got the employees they need in order to stand up that facility quickly. But also we are a customer. We were able to secure a significant number of N95s for our healthcare providers. So we're very excited about that. We've also received some funding through the Ivy Foundation. Catherine Ivy and her team have donated very generously $5 million to further enhance our ability to purchase additional N95s. And so we've been working very closely with her and her team, as well as our procurement team, to ensure that we're purchasing the N95s to ensure that that is getting to the hospitals. Obviously, you all know there's lots of other equipment on that list as well, the gowns, the gloves, the swabs, you name it. Our team, in working obviously with the other organizations out there, are identifying potential sources. We've got some great manufacturers in our state that have actually pivoted their current operations to stand up new opportunities in gowns and masks and other areas. And so if you are aware of a company that has that level of capacity or are wanting to connect with our manufacturing team, please let us know. That team has been dedicated to ensuring that we are not only helping to source the material for PPE, but also helping our manufacturers through this process. We know this crisis has hit every single business in our state, and we want to make sure that our manufacturers have the support they need. So our team is actively working in that arena. We also have developed, as many of you know, a resource through the ArizonaTogether.org website. and that provides not only in healthcare information and the latest guidance from a health standpoint, it also has a substantial number of business resources that are available, in addition to standing up that website to really provide the necessary information to our community. We also created a fund, and that fund was established to raise funding for three specific purposes. One, to ensure that our healthcare providers had the necessary PPE. So that's one part of the fund. The second is an important part of what we're doing as well, and that is to ensure that our students have access to remote learning. Knowing that obviously we want to make sure that every citizen in our state is safe. Our school closures obviously was part of that effort. And that left many students with a challenge in a challenging situation without access to either the hardware or the broadband access in order to engage in remote learning. So thanks to the leadership of Todd and the entire team at the Chamber for putting that drive together on laptops. We're so excited to be working with you on that, but we really appreciate your leadership in that area and working with the Department of Education. We were able to sort of follow that lead as well to ensure that we had the hotspots available for these students. So as you supply those laptops, we want to make sure that they have the access that they need. And those hotspots, we announced a drive a couple of weeks ago. The governor and the superintendent were able to announce the need for donations in providing those hotspots. So we've received just over 400 hotspots today, and we continue to work with our partners to and the companies in that area to make sure that we're getting the necessary equipment to our students. So that's the second area of focus for us in the fund. And then the third, obviously, and many of you are aware, that we have some amazing nonprofits in our community, those that are helping to serve the community. They're focused on nutrition and food security, also homelessness, and a whole host of areas that are important for our citizens. We have also made that a primary focus of our fund. So PPE, remote learning for our students, and then obviously supporting the amazing nonprofits in our community that are providing the day-to-day support that our community needs. We have also developed a marketing campaign around a lot of these financial programs that are designed for small businesses to ensure that they know where to tap into those resources. And we were able to share that with all of our partners in creating a unified voice and develop. There's so much information, as obviously lots of people are trying to keep up to the latest information, and our thought was to compile as much of that information as possible. We've got a great team here who is constantly, day by day, making sure that we have the latest and greatest, the new information. So we want to make sure we made that available to all of our partners across the state. So as you know, we've got 93 cities in the state, as cities and towns. We've got chambers in every one of those communities, as well as regional economic development groups, other industry partners. So there's a lot of great organizations in our state, and we wanted to make sure that we were providing some support to those organizations as well. So providing specific support to the actual businesses, but also making sure that we're providing a level of support to all of our business service organizations. Todd, I think I could probably go on and on and on. There's been so much that has happened in the last 30 days. We all know that we've had a significant number of people who unfortunately have been recently laid off or furloughed. And there have been some programs obviously designed to help support our citizens who have unfortunately been laid off or impacted through this crisis. And I think most of you know that with the federal government of this additional $600 a week, as well as the state's portion of $240 a week, that now provides some relief to the individuals who have been impacted. That is obviously on top of the one-time stipend or stimulus that the federal government has offered. So if you look at the benefits that are coming in for individuals and you were to annualize that benefit over the course of a year, that's roughly, about a $44,000 to $45,000 a year. Knowing though that the federal piece is in place until the end of July, I believe it's July 25th. The state has expanded and extended our benefits from 26 weeks to 39 weeks. So the governor added another 13 weeks there. So again, as a state, trying to pull every lever we have to ensure that we're providing the necessary relief to not only our citizens, but also the business community. So with that, I will turn it back over to you and answer any questions you may have.
Well, Sandra, thank you. Thanks for joining us. You have, but it's very rare for a conversation to occur these days without your name coming up, and you're very modest, but I think you are the equivalent of an Arizona first responder from the economic side. You've been so important for so many of us, and so I want to take a moment to thank you for your leadership, and I'm pretty sure the governor would agree. And I know he's coming to see you at 2, so we'll try and get some questions in. So last week, the governor sent letters out to folks, to business leaders, letting them know that he's thinking about recovery, which is exactly right. Everyone is trying to think about that now, and he asked you to go out and start talking to business leaders. Can you give us some general themes that you're hearing from business leaders as you talk about recovery and opening the state back up?
Absolutely. So I've spoken with a number of business and community leaders across the state, gathering as much input as we can. And some of the themes that I've been hearing, and again, none of this is definitive, right? These are just ideas that people are putting forward. But a phased approach has come up a lot of in many of the conversations I've had, that companies have weighed in on, what their ideas are about how to slowly reopen the economy. So we've heard from a number of people, what the timing will be and what their recommendations would be. Again, we are compiling all this information, so I don't have any definitive answers for you. Our focus was obviously to gather information, provide a framework, and that level of guidance ultimately for the governor to make final decisions. We've also heard a lot about safety protocols and the importance that employers and many of our employers have been thinking about this. So I've had some great conversations with manufacturers and companies who are focused on office space, retail, across the board, and many companies are thinking about what kind of safety protocols are they putting in place to ensure that not only are their employees safe, but their customers are safe as well. So that's an important aspect we've been hearing from companies about. We've also heard, different policy ideas. Some vary industry by industry, some cut across all industries. As you know, the governor has asked me to lead this effort in reaching out to the business community, but has also asked my colleague, Debbie Johnson, to lead the effort on the hospitality side. So Debbie and I are working very, very closely together, sharing information, and we will be assembling all that information so that we are putting together a plan that focuses on our business community, our hospitality industry, and ensuring that we have a plan to not only reopen the economy, but really focus on reopening and recovering and moving forward.
Well, thank you. And there's no question that this has been done in a very thoughtful, data-driven way, and I appreciate that. And you mentioned safety protocols, and I think that's something that people are really thinking about. There was the OH poll that came out this week that talks about people wanting to be careful about social contact. So in terms of other states, or maybe what you all are considering, what are some of the guidelines that you think we're going to ask businesses to follow as they start to come back into sort of normal operations?
Well, I think that the first priority, obviously, as the governor has mentioned, is making sure that we follow CDC and the Department of Health Services guidelines. So there are guidelines that were established by the White House last week that gave states criteria to start to think about a phased approach, and they have a different tiered phase 1, phase 2 process. So the primary focus obviously is to ensure the health and well-being of our citizens. So that will always be a priority. Then in looking at that, as we start to think about how to put those practices, how to put those social distancing and protection measures into practice in business is somewhat varied depending on what kind of business you have. So we've seen some great examples with some of the retail establishments, those in the food, obviously, industry. So as you're going into the grocery stores or Costco or some of these establishments, they have already started putting in the screening and measuring out how close you can come when you're in line. So there are some things that obviously industries have had to implement very, very quickly. We've seen actually a number of great examples from the manufacturing industry because they were and are considered essential businesses. And so many of the manufacturers have been putting these safety measures in place on how they're redesigning, in some ways, their manufacturing operations to ensure that they're meeting those guidelines. So the guidelines are important, and the safety guidelines from CDC and the Department of Health are going to be very, very important in the overall planning of how we move forward. So I don't have any real specifics at this point. We're gathering that information, and we'll be able to provide more details as we gather that information. But I think the health and well-being of our citizens takes priority.
Yeah, clearly that's how I think the governor sort of based his decisions. Quick question. So, when this all happened, we saw a lot of displaced workers, and you talk about that 97% number, and we were all trying to figure out how to connect people with jobs, and you quickly got something together to do that. So we were able to take displaced workers and connect them. Now that we've stabilized, are there still industries that are looking for people today, and how are we connecting them?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and I want to thank you and your entire team. You've been very focused on the workforce element of this, and so we really do appreciate that partnership and your leadership in this. As we started down this path 30 days ago or so, we obviously saw a huge hit to our hospitality industry. And so we were able to, in working with you and others in the state and the Arizona Office of Tourism, develop a program to really help crosswalk some of those displaced workers into industries that were growing, companies that were growing. We saw a lot of growth in our grocery stores. We saw growth in the healthcare industry. And so in some of those cases, we were able to take the industry leaders from the hotel and hospitality industry, start to begin to match them up with those leaders in these other sectors and begin to develop a matching program. So that's been an important part of the initial work. We have now moved into other areas, as you know, and there is a number of industries that are continuing to grow. When we think about remote learning, when we think about telework, and we start realizing that those systems, in order to create the structure that's necessary to make those work, are really important. So as an example, Department of Economic Security, with all of the demand that has been placed on their system and their employees, we have to quickly add employees to help process a lot of the claims. We're seeing our call centers who were set up to do telework call centers and create sort of these remote call center opportunities, actually seeing an increase in business. So we're seeing activity there. We're also looking at ways in which to ensure that those that have recently been laid off have the tools necessary to upskill during this process. In some cases, there will be individuals who will not be returning to work right away. And the federal benefits do last until the end of July, and the state's benefits last beyond that. So we want to make sure that if we can get people back to work, that's our top priority. We want to make sure that we've got people who want jobs and we put them in places where there's a demand. But then there'll be a number of other individuals that will not return back to work quickly. So we are looking at developing training opportunities to ensure that they can access training and upskill their, make sure that they've got some upskilling opportunities. And so we're working on some things there. We'd love to partner with you on that, and we'll have more information about that probably in about a week. But that is a direction we're going in.
Well, great to hear that news, and certainly be happy to partner on the upskilling and the training. That's wonderful for these folks. I'm going to get to another question from our audience. One of the questions, maybe self-serving, after the emergency, will restaurants be allowed to continue selling alcohol to go? And I don't know if you've had any conversations about that.
I will say that has been discussed in a lot of the conversations I've been having with a lot of the businesses. So I think that was very popular when that was implemented, and so it certainly still is on our list. But
good. There's another question. Is there a plan to support businesses that have been working to launch this year? And I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of these folks. Are there resources for new and startup businesses that were kind of in that launch mode before everything hit?
Yes, actually, we've got an exciting program. I think we shared this with you earlier in the year, and we partnered with Stout Street Capital to present a conference called Unmet. That conference, unfortunately, we had to make a shift, and we obviously weren't able to have the conference here in Arizona. So we will be having that conference remotely. Like we are still, so the conference will still happen. We've gotten over 100 companies throughout the country who have qualified to be part of that program. And then we've got, I believe, over 150 venture capitalists across the country who have also signed up. So we continue to run our programs. We run them a little differently, but we have not skipped a beat in working with our early stage technology companies. We've we've got the Arizona Commerce Authority's team is split up into 3 areas. One is COVID response, and we've got an entire team that's dedicated to the here and now, everything that's happening around COVID, making sure that we've got a team dedicated to that. Then have a team dedicated to ensuring that our day-to-day operations outside of COVID continue to move forward. And so our team is working again with companies in our pipeline. There are still some companies that are pursuing new opportunities in our state. We've made a few announcements or closed a few deals along the way. So we still have a pipeline of companies who are interested in moving forward. So we've got a team that is working specifically to ensure that our day-to-day operations and the work that we've been doing with our companies continues. Now, granted, some of our projects have been put on hold. Companies are, in some cases are, deciding that they're going to give, a 2-3 month before they start to move forward again. So we're monitoring all of that, and we continue to work with those. And then we have another segment that is really looking to the future and really looking at ways to really accelerate our response. And so it's short, mid, and long-term strategies. But our ongoing team across the board, and this includes our innovation team, has been working, remotely and through Zoom and all the other great technology platforms that are out there. But we still host, they still host the founders meetings. They still are providing a level of support to our entrepreneurs. We engaged in a contract with 500 startups, and we have launched programs with them here in Arizona. And so those services still continue. And if there are companies out there that want to be involved, please reach out to us. There's a lot of exciting things that are happening in that space. And as you can imagine, when especially in these unprecedented times when we're dealing with such an enormous crisis, there will be a lot of innovation in order to move beyond some of these challenges. It will take very innovative companies who are able to develop new technologies and new ways of doing business, and we want to continue to encourage that. So if you have companies that are still interested in pursuing technology, especially technology startup companies, we would love to talk to them.
Well, thank you, Sandra. I'm sure that you're probably gonna get some calls to do that. So let me pivot a little bit. You and I were either fortunate or unfortunate enough to go through the last recession. You look better. I don't. What are the big differences that you see in sort of this, I don't want to call it a recession, maybe downturn, and 08, and what does the recovery look like? You see numbers that we probably don't see from a much different perspective. Can you give us a sense for what you're seeing?
Yeah, so the recession that started in 08 was particularly hard on Arizona, as we all know. No surprise to anybody, we lost over 300,000 jobs. And it was devastating to our construction industry. Our economy was hit very hard. If we think about how hard we were hit back then, everyone talked about Michigan and the auto industry, and we lost more jobs here in Arizona in our construction industry than they did in the auto industry. So that process, and as you mentioned, we were both here during that time, was really centered around how do we diversify our economy? How do we make sure that we have programs in place, policies in place that ultimately will help us mitigate those risks in the future? And I'm happy to say that, as we looked at the numbers and as we worked together with our partners, and obviously under Governor Ducey's leadership, we were able to put together a very intentional plan on diversifying and creating a much more sustainable economy. And Arizona, as you know, before COVID, the COVID crisis, the economy was booming. And when you looked at the industry makeup of Arizona, we saw a significant increase in the number of manufacturing jobs. And when we looked at across the board how diversified we were substantially more diversified than we were in '08. So feeling very good about the fact that not only was our population growing and growing faster than other states, and knowing that our job growth was growing, and the kinds of jobs that were available for Arizonans were high quality jobs, many of them in the manufacturing industry, technology. We excited about where we were. COVID obviously has created challenges across the country. And you know, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but knowing that we had such a strong foundation, and it was not just about growth, it was really about quality, it was about diversification, it was about making sure that we had the talent necessary to fill these jobs of the future, and working with our universities and our community colleges across the state to really establish Arizona as a leader, particularly in manufacturing, but across the board in technology, I think will help us as we recover through COVID, maybe faster than other states, I'm hoping. Again, don't have a crystal ball. We don't know when this truly will end, but knowing that we've got a very strong base to work with, and we've got great companies in our state who continue to expand their operations, I feel that we're in a good position. Unfortunately, we, along with obviously our, you know, our sister states across the country, are, you know, having to deal with this challenging time. I believe that we have the necessary infrastructure and the necessary programs and the policy. I think that's another important thing to think about, is over the years, especially these last 5-6 years, the very focused business-friendly policies that were put in place still exist. And I just recently, a half hour ago or so, I was on a call with some companies out of California talking again about, you know, Arizona's business climate and the business-friendly environment that's been created here. So I'm hoping that, you know, we'll bounce back quick.
Well, it's interesting. I remember probably on numerous occasions you telling people that we did diversify after '08, but of course there was no way to really test that until now, and it's nice to see that we passed the test. So congratulations. Obviously, all of the states are feeling this, but you know, we have been a leader in states in bringing companies to Arizona. Understanding we're in a crisis now, is there still a deal flow? There's still companies still looking at Arizona? You mentioned talking to some companies. Can we expect after this comes down that to start ramping up again?
Yes, I'm confident we'll see a ramp up. We actually have projects in the pipeline who are still moving forward. Many of them have decided to put things on hold and reevaluating, but some are still in the pipeline. So I believe that we will bounce back in a way that you know, continues, maybe in a different way, but kind of continues that same momentum. Arizona had strong momentum going into this, and I believe that we'll continue to have that very strong momentum as we come out of this.
Absolutely. Thinking about, you know, you're talking business leaders as we round up the conversation. What's the timeline for putting together a plan that would let us know that, hey, we're going to start to phase in businesses coming back in? What does that look like?
Yeah. Good question. So we are in the process of gathering that information, and thank you for providing input into that. Thanks to all of you on the phone or on this conference for providing information. So I'd love to hear from you. If you've got ideas, please share them with us. I am combing through a lot of that data as we speak. I hope to have I hope to have a framework in place and provide the governor with recommendations early next week. So fast moving, as everything is in this environment. So if you have ideas and things that you'd like us to consider, please let us know. But Debbie and I will be working together for the remainder of this week and over the weekend to make sure that we're providing that information to the governor.
So stay tuned. Next week, we could be starting to hear something. As we wrap up, just in the form of a question, but it's more of a comment. As a small business owner, I appreciate the financial resources to keep our employees on payrolls, which is important. Prior to the crisis, small businesses were driving economic growth. And how can we encourage business leaders to consider local vendors first? For instance, professional services, CPA firms, attorneys, insurance companies. I think that's something that you've always done. Local chambers do, will continue to do, and I'm assuming the state always looks to help when they're doing projects to hire local companies. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah,
Good.
I mean, it's incredibly important. Obviously, we want to make sure we're supporting Arizona businesses, and so we'll continue down that path. We're got a strong partnership, obviously, with Local First. They've got some initiatives with some of the micro businesses. And as you mentioned, obviously, the strong relationship that we have with you and your organization and several others throughout the state, very important to us.
Well, thank you. I know that the business community has really been appreciative of your efforts. I know our chamber leaders have had numerous calls from you, so thank you for that. As we wrap up, there's been so much negative news out there. You're consumed by it. Can you tell us something that you've seen or heard in the last week that just makes you sort of think about things in a different way or in a positive way?
Well, Todd, there's so many things I have to say. The calls I've been making, the just generous donations that people are making. And I mentioned this a few times, and so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But when I moved out here in '92, born and raised in Canada, but when I moved out here in '92, I was amazed at how collaborative the state really is and how an outsider at that time can get involved, get engaged, and feel like you're part of the community. And it is times like this that I remember. I mean, I love the state as we all do. And it's times like this that reminds us that we're so fortunate to be in a state that people care so deeply. People like to work together. It's such a collaborative state, no matter where you come from, no matter what you're doing. If you want to get involved, there's always an opportunity to get involved. And so what I've seen over the course of the last 30 days is this incredible willingness for people to jump in, help out, provide resources. The acts of kindness that are happening in our community is just incredible. So it's I think it makes obviously me very proud of the decisions I've made to live here in Arizona. And I don't want to single out one example over another because, quite honestly, we have seen everyone out there, organizations, nonprofits, individuals, business leaders, community leaders, of course, our policy leaders, the amazing leadership from Governor Ducey. Everyone is pulling together, and I think we talk about this a lot, but we are all in this together. And in Arizona, we work very collaboratively. So it's just been an honor to work with you and all of our partners across the state. I think that we're very fortunate.
Well, so that's a great way to end this. I will say that Canada can have Prince Harry. We're happy you're here. Thank you for coming. Appreciate everything you're doing. We will hopefully have an opportunity to have you back. We'd love to get an update when things start to roll again and understand how you're seeing things. So we'll certainly look to have you back. For the rest of you, I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank our sponsors, SRP, APS, and Fennemore Craig. Also to let you know, we're going to be having an economic update this Friday at 2:30, focused on sort of what's happening now and what we can expect into the future. And I think you're probably going to hear a lot of what Sandra said in some more detail, which is great. Other than that, everyone have a great day. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.